So those of you who have the chance of not living in Canada might be wondering a little bit what is going on, especially if you live south and you have already gone back to normal vaccine or no vaccine. To put it simply, proto-dictatorship. They have already started imprisoning dissidents and taking their possession, like what happened to Pastor James Coates from Grace Life Church, where he was sent to maximum security prison for 35 days and still on bail. And the RCMP has now turned the church itself into a command post of sorts. Arthur Pawlowski and his brother David were also imprisoned during the weekend for having the audacity to have a church service during the weekend, something that obviously the mosques are completely exempt from, using an injunction obtained in secret by the Alberta Health Services, injunction that was actually targeting all citizens of Alberta, making all protest and all gathering completely illegal and authorizing the cops to arrest you at any moment, despite the fact that the Charter of Rights and Freedom is supposed to guarantee you the right to peaceably assemble. Something that obviously the Free Palestine movement and protests that we just had were completely exempt from and barely had any police present. Like always, we see the double standard of left-wing politicians, because UCP might stand for United Conservative Party, but Jason Kenney is not a conservative. The best way I can describe him is, he is the equivalent of Albertan Mitt Romney, pretending he is a conservative during the elections and then turning into a liberal immediately. And don't think this is specific to Alberta, this is also going on in Ontario, this is going on in Quebec, this is going on everywhere in Canada essentially. The conservative parties, like I've said in my previous video, are not conservative, they are completely left-wing. So when the Premier of Alberta says he wants a new base, he means it literally, just like Doug Ford. He wants an entire class of indentured servants that are loyal to the state and more specifically, to him. So you might have been wondering what has been playing behind me this whole time. This is a March for Freedom that has happened earlier today on May 15th. The cops were not arresting anybody because, as John Carpe from the JCCF, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom, a legal NGO in Canada, has obtained an amendment to the secret injunction obtained by AHS. In his own words,
and they got an order that allows police to immediately arrest anyone that is peacefully exercising their charter freedoms in public. Alberta Health Services boasted about it. I've got a copy of the Alberta Health Services press release, and they said that Alberta Health Services also sought and received a court order against all other organizers of advertised illegal gatherings and rallies breaching COVID-19 public health orders. So you have Alberta Health Services getting this injunction against all Albertans. Lawyers know that injunctions are only supposed to be issued to a particular individual or group of individuals. An injunction that's issued against the entire population is not valid. But this is what Alberta Health Services is boasting about having sought and obtained in their news release. An injunction that applies to everybody. And immediately the Calgary Police Service, they put out a press release and they said, because of the May 6th court order, we can immediately arrest anybody.
So in short, the Albertan government tried to do something completely unconstitutional, and that's in the objectively most right-wing province of all Canada, so much that it's often called the Canadian Texas. Lucky for us, it would seem that some judges have not forgotten that the Charter of Right and Freedom is the highest law of the land, and no orders from the AHS is allowed to actually contravene it. Regarding the rest of the restrictions, which Kenney now says won't go away before we reach 75% of vaccination, which is quite frankly impossible considering what is happening in the south, but there is hope. Not from Kenney or Henshaw, of course. Fuck these two. After the march started, I had a bit of a chat with John Carpe, and he told me that his goal regarding the rest of the restriction is to end them through the trials against James Coates, the Pawlowskis, or Chris Scott from the Whistle Stop Cafe. Because in these trials, nobody is pretending that they didn't break the orders from the AHS. What the defense is arguing, however, is that these orders are both unconstitutional and completely unnecessary. In a trial against James Coates, this argument has already been made, and the Crown, despite the fact that they had 15 months to gather and provide any sort of evidence, has requested a delay to gather more of it, which, sadly, the judge has authorized in the beginning of May. So the next phases of the trial is going to happen in early July now, and again, that's assuming that the Crown does not delay anymore. Because let's face it, the government doesn't have any sort of evidence. If they did, they would have paraded it every single day and the mainstream media would have done exactly the same. So the Premier has completely alienated his base completely, which is why he wants a new one, but he is also in boiling water in his own party. You might have already heard that 16 members of the parliament from his own party were already calling for the end of the restrictions. And if you look at the screen right now, 16 MLAs is already a huge chunk of his majority. Now we have Todd Lowen, who quit his position as caucus chair for the UCP, has also called for the resignation of Jason Kenney, just like another MLA called Drew Barnes. So Kenney, instead of resigning because he's an unmitigated disaster, decided to pull a Doug Ford and expelled them. Problem is, Kenney can try to silence everyone in his party, he's still hated by everyone who put him in his chair, and he's going to lose hard in the next elections. Assuming he doesn't pull a Democrat and does universal mail voting. But so you see what the problem is with Canada. Just like in the states held by Democrats, we have a bunch of politicians using the public health orders, brought by pencil pushers who haven't seen a patient in decades, to tear down the constitution and subjugate the entire population. So for all of you who are still living under restriction, be it in Canada or anywhere else, please, for the love of cake, stop complying. You don't get rid of tyrants by bending the knee to them. Anyway, if you like this kind of content, please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and the next one should hopefully be some gun content. Salut, bonsoir!
However, before this court injunction, if you got a ticket, you could plead not guilty, and a trial date would be set. And then you could tell the Crown prosecutors, give them notice that you're launching a charter challenge to the public health order. And then you could force the government to come into court and to show its medical and scientific evidence, because the onus is not on us, the onus is on the government to show that these measures are backed by science and evidence.